down and got Rob Schumer.
And we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
And I am Chris Cooper, filling in for Ann Northrop.
Great to see you, Chris. Thanks for being here. And
Glad
we
to
have
be
a lot
here.
of news. And we're going to start with the fact that the new Congress, United States Congress, is more LGBT than ever.
Meanwhile, we're going to play What's My Lie today with the lone gay Republican in the House, George Santos.
Yeah. We're going to talk about a lot of mixed verdicts on whether groups claiming to be religious can discriminate against LGBTQ people.
Meanwhile, gay financier and philanthropist Scott Minerd has died.
The British Conservative government is blocking Scotland's bill to make it easier to change one's gender, an unprecedented challenge to Scotland's home rule.
Meanwhile, breakthroughs for LGBTQ rights have happened in the Netherlands and, of all places, in Poland.
And a broader decision that we just heard about today from the European Court of Human Rights. That murder of a young gay leader in Kenya turns out to be domestic violence.
There was a gay host and gay honoree at the troubled Golden Globe Awards, returning for the first time after a hiatus.
And we're going to save a lot of time at the end of the show because Chris Cooper, and this is news, is going to tell us about his new book, Better Living Through Birding, his upcoming TV series on National Geographic and Disney Plus, and reviews of 4 new gay films and a TV series.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot.
But let's start with the George Santos show and get that out of the way. This is the gay person making the most news in the United States these days.
Yeah, he's sort of the gayish guy who is alternatively named George Santos. I'm sure Andy is as embarrassed as I am that he is representing Long Island, where both of us grew up.
Right.
The latest bits of news are he hates puppies. He apparently stole the money, $3,000, that was set aside to help a disabled veteran get surgery for his dog so the dog could survive. He did a GoFundMe under the name of Anthony DeVolder and ran off with the money, and the dog died.
Right, and we're going to get to that, his mix-up on his names. And by the way, I think people who can forgive all kinds of political corruption cannot forgive the mistreating of pets.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was important to lead with the dead dog. But yeah, the lies have just been sort of cascading. He led a Stop the Steal rally while wearing a stolen scarf that he allegedly stole from his roommates. His resume has been exposed as an exercise in fiction. We already knew how much fiction there was, but now it's on his resume going all the way back to 2020, which he submitted to the Republicans. Some of them knew what was going on.
But some Republicans are standing up to him, and the ones on Long Island who there they are. These are all Long Island and Queens Republicans from that district and others from the New York Party. That they are totally embarrassed for him. They want him to resign. They said he's a stain on the House of Representatives, and one of the recently elected ones, Long Island's Anthony Esposito, joined the call for his resignation. The Nassau County Executive, 4 Republican members of Congress, but not that Stefanik woman upstate who was in the GOP leadership.
Well, and that's the thing, Andy, is that the local politicians, the local Republicans are calling for his resignation, but the national politicians and the national leadership in Congress are beholden to him because he's part of their slim majority that backed Kevin McCarthy during that whole struggle we saw like a week or two ago. So, and that is sort of symptomatic of the whole problem. And that's why I think it's so important to put George Santos, as amusing and entertaining and ridiculous as this has been, to put it in context, which is that he is not an aberration. he is the ultimate example of what the post-Trump Republican Party has turned into. Say anything, lie up the wazoo, repeat the lie often enough, do whatever it takes to win. And then you won't get any consequences because there will be enough enablers around you who will just sit back and let it happen because they want to keep winning too. And that's sort of what the Republican Party, which even though you and I may not have agreed with a lot of their policies, at least they had some principles, and at least they had some values. And now it's just sort of say anything to win. And that's what they've devolved into.
Right. And so out gay representative from the Bronx, Richie Torres, has introduced the Santos Act, which stands for Stop Another Non-Truthful Office Seeker. A $100,000 fine if you lie about your education, military service, and employment history, and or a 1-year prison sentence. He's introduced this bill. Now, Santos went on the Steve Bannon podcast, which tells you everything you need to know about him. Steve was in court facing federal charges, or no, local charges, federal charges, whatever. Anyway, so the show was guest hosted by Matt Gaetz,
oh Lord,
which tells you all you need to know. And Santos said, "I just pray for all of you when they come for you that you have the strength that I have." This guy.
Oh my God! The levels of delusion. I mean, and like I said, it becomes comical after a while. He claimed to be a volleyball champion. Actually, that was his boss at Linkbridge Investors. He claimed to need double knee replacement because of how hard he played volleyball. He never played. He claimed that he had a brain tumor. He claimed he was one of the first 10 New Yorkers to get COVID. I mean, the medical miracles with this guy just don't stop.
Now, we told you that Matt Gaetz at least asked him, "Where'd you get all that money when you were broke?" Right? The $700,000 you lent to your campaign. And he said, "Well, I'll tell you where I didn't get it. I didn't get it from the Russians or the Ukraine or something else." And he said, "Well, that's an answer." No, it's not. And this week it's been discovered that he did do business with the cousin of a Russian oligarch, a go-between for Stormy Daniels. And this is the kind of characters that he hangs out with. These are the kind of people he's appointing to his staff.
Well, and as if all that toxic mendacity wasn't enough, he gave an interview, or an interview has been turned up, where he talked about don't say gay. Sorry, it's not an interview; it was a post in Facebook where he talked about don't say gay, and he said, "As a gay man, I stand proudly behind not teaching our children sex or sexual orientation." That's incumbent on parents, not educators. DeSantis, you have my full-blown support, and I support your decision to protect our children's innocence.
Well, let's hear from George Santos himself. He went to a forum in 2019, and catch this at the beginning, he introduced it's a gay forum to get gay people out of the Democratic Party. It's called
Yeah, we're the haters.
Oh, you gotta be here.
So my name is Anthony DeVolder. I'm a New York City resident. I've recently founded a group called United for Trump, so if you guys want to follow, that would be awesome. My question's directed for both Blair and Brandon. Well, Brandon's an idol to all of us. Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But Blair, I have a question. How do you think that as a trans woman and a conservative, you can help educate other trans people from not having to follow the narrative that the media and the Democrats put forward? And how can Brandon incorporate that into Walkaway in more in depth? That's my question.
My approach has always been to just live my life authentically, make the videos I want to make, and I don't like using the word educate because I feel like who might.
Yeah, I mean, that's enough. I mean,
yeah,
we just wanted to give you a little flavor of Anthony DeVolder,
which
is how he was representing himself in 2019, the year before he ran as George Santos.
It's a constant moving target with him. That's why I call him the gayish guy, alternatively known as George Santos. He's now been appointed to committees. He will be on the House Committee on Small Business, where no doubt his experience as a consultant to Willy Wonka on starting his chocolate factory will be useful. And he has been appointed to the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, where he can explore the effect of Jewish space lasers, I'm sure. I'm sure that's what's on the
Well,
top of his agenda.
look, we can only hope that he's an albatross around the neck of the party, but shame on the people of Long Island for this is the kind of person that they would elect. I mean, not just the lies, totally hard right, totally Trumpian. Long Island was trending. We're both from Long Island originally. Long Island was Republican when we were kids, but it was trending more Democrat. And then, in this last election, they went back to the right.
And Andy, a friend of mine who is a Nassau County legislator, who's a Democratic politician, and I asked her, how could the Democrats let this happen? How could they not do their due diligence and get this out there? And they said that some of these irregularities were known to the voters before the election. Obviously, not the depth and the extent of them, but some of them were known, and they just didn't get traction.
They tried to beat him just on the fact that he was anti-abortion and pro-MAGA. That's why they tried to beat him. They did not really go after all this stuff. The only one that did was a Republican newspaper out on Long Island, which found out all this stuff and had to endorse the Democrat. But enough on George Santos, unless you have anything more.
No.
Well, let's talk about the whole Congress, because we now know that the 118th Congress set a new record for LGBT representation. From one out representative in the 99th Congress in 1986, and I guess that would have been Gary Studs of Massachusetts, to 11 out representatives and 2 out senators. Look at the chart here. That's how much it's gone up over the years. In the House, all but 1 are Democrats. You know who the Republican is. And in the Senate, we now have Democrat Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin and newly minted independent Kirsten Sinema, who is trying to survive in Arizona after alienating the Democrats who elected her.
In the House, we have, and a lot of these are people who have been reelected. They're not first-time winners, but Richie Torres from New York, Becca Balint from Vermont, Chris Pappas from New Hampshire, David Cicciolini from Rhode Island, Mark Pocan from Wisconsin, Eric Sorensen from Illinois, Sharice Davis from Kansas, Robert Garcia from California, and my fellow Harvard grad, one class ahead of me, Mark Takano from California.
Great group. Although it's not 10% of the Congress.
No.
If we're 10% of the population.
Exactly.
So, you talked about the Republican leadership. Kevin McCarthy's majority is tenuous. And what is it, like 4 people? That's why he's holding on to Santos. And Florida Representative Vern Buchanan, who was the senior member on the powerful Ways and Means Committee, was denied the chairmanship by McCarthy in favor of a more subservient McCarthy ally. So Buchanan exploded at the McCarthy staff. He used bad words, but it fueled anxiety among the Republicans that he was just going to leave the Congress and leave them with 1 less member out of pique, reducing the majority from 4 to 3.
Looking back on it, you really have to give Nancy Pelosi credit, because she held a fractious, very disparate group of Democrats together when they had a majority as slim as the Republicans have now, or close to it, and she held them together. And I don't think Kevin McCarthy is going to be able to do that.
Newt Gingrich, who was a horror show, said Nancy Pelosi was the greatest speaker ever. Mm-hmm. All right. We told you about that Herschel Walker staffer who accused conservative leader Matt Schlapp, chair of CPAC, of sexually harassing him, molesting him back in October. This guy, staying anonymous publicly, has filed a lawsuit seeking $9.4 million in damages. Schlapp denies everything, but the guy recorded all this stuff at the time, told everybody at the time, told the Walker staff at the time, and now he's claiming retaliation from Walker's wife, the guy who's bringing the suit. Anyway, she worked in the Trump White House. Her name is Mercedes Schlapp, or Mercy Schlapp, and on Trump's reelection campaign.
And Schlapp has denied any improper behavior and is saying that this has caused him tremendous pain.
Oh yeah, well, he ought to have thought about that before he put his hand on the guy's crotch. All right, shall we talk about the stuff that's going on in the states? Some of these state issues. In Texas, a school district that removed, this is a federal issue actually, a school district that removed all LGBTQ themed books, 130 of them, from its libraries is being investigated by the US Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights for violations of Title IX.
Yeah, they're taking a really innovative approach. They're saying that by banning books by class of people, that is a form of discrimination. And if they can make this legal approach stick, then it's going to be a powerful tool across the country for rolling back these really spreading and heinous attempts to eliminate everything gay from school libraries and all the other book bannings.
Yeah, the ACLU had gotten the ball rolling down in Texas, and they said, look, first of all, they're making a lot of false claims about the content of the books, and they're removing them anyway. They're removing books on racial identity also. And they're saying when you do this, it sends a message to the entire community, not just us, that LGBTQ identities are inherently obscene and worthy of discrimination. And they're depriving LGBTQ students of the opportunity to read about ourselves and our own experience. And this is a nationwide problem.
Absolutely.
So, now the case could, if we win it, then the religious people could start saying, well, we want more religious books reflective of us. Fine, let's put everything in the library. That's what I'm in favor of.
I agree 100%. It's funny, this researcher for a right-leaning group in Wisconsin named Will Flanders, he said, this isn't the sort of civil rights issue that requires federal intervention. It's a question about books in schools, not about individual rights being violated. Well, what about the individual rights of the students who now no longer have access to books about themselves?
Right.
Duh.
Right. Okay. And staying on this theme at Yeshiva, wait a minute, should we go? Yeah, let's go to Yeshiva University. We've told you about this. It's a college in New York that won't recognize its LGBTQ student group, and they're continuing to fight against it. So 3 state senators in New York, including our own Brad Hoylman, I think we have a picture of him there. There he is.
And Brad is openly gay.
Yes, are now saying, well, you got $230 million in public funds to renovate your facilities under a state bond act, but you represented yourself as just an educational institution, not as a religious institution. And
now
so they're saying you may have committed fraud in that case.
And the reason why this matters so much is because of the long history that Yeshiva U has with a student group that has attempted to form an LGBTQ club. And when they were confronted with this, they said, oh no, we don't have to recognize the club because we're actually a religious institution. So they're claiming religious institution when it suits them, but then secular institution when they want the money. So which is it? And this is potentially going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And if it does, our chances of winning, it's hard to say because
that's the problem. I mean, the court seems to be willing to give the religious groups their cake and let them eat it too. I mean, they can play by a different set of rules. I mean, look, we've also talked about the fact that a lot of these ultra-Orthodox schools, this is not yeshiva, but they're not even meeting state educational standards, and the state isn't doing anything about it. And that's in New York. So anyway, separate the church and state. By the way, the new governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, oh man, she's on the warpath in the same way against all these books and on race and sexual orientation and everything. But
so continuing on the theme of religious exemptions and religious entitlements, in Michigan, in Maryland, there's a Catholic hospital, or it used to be a Catholic hospital, but it became part of the University of Maryland system. And when they did that, they decided that they weren't going to give affirming care to a transgender man, Jesse Hammonds, who was scheduled to have a hysterectomy. So they claimed, well, there's a covenant. When our formerly Catholic hospital was bought by the University of Maryland and incorporated into their system, There was a covenant that said we had to follow all the Catholic policies that were in place beforehand. But on the other hand, when it became part of the University of Maryland, it became a state institution that is subject to constitutional non-discrimination requirements and the Affordable Care Act, which says you can't discriminate. So those two things have collided, and Jesse Hammonds sued to say, hey, you know what? This was wrong that I had to go to another hospital to get my hysterectomy.
Now, it's a subtle legal issue in this case. The hospital receives federal funds, and they still call themselves a Catholic hospital within the University of Maryland. But when you receive the federal funds, that's an agreement to waive sovereign immunity from ACA claims. So the judge in this case was a Clinton appointee. The University of Maryland's trying to claim, we're still committed to meeting the needs of transgender patients, but no, if you send them away to another place, you're not.
Exactly. And to clarify what you meant by sovereign immunity, that's the principle that states can't be sued by the federal government. And they're saying because this is now a state hospital, we can't be sued by the federal government.
Right.
But when you sign on to the ACA, you give that up. So there are lots of really complicated legal wrangling involved in this whole case.
Exactly, but you're right that in the end, we're up against the United States Supreme Court, and that's going to be a problem.
Yep.
Unless we reform the court, which we don't seem to be moving in any such direction. All right, in Missouri, in Stockton, the abusive Christian residential facility, we've told you about this, Agape Boarding School, was shutting down January 20th, and they're saying the closure is voluntary, but dozens of former students have gone public with stories of physical, mental, and sexual abuse in the last few years, or at least they reported it in the last few years. There are numerous lawsuits pending. The census at the facility for boys was down to 25 from 121 in early 2021. The Missouri Attorney General filed an injunction seeking to close it in September.
And it sounds like they don't have the funds to continue anyway. They used to have a budget of $4 million per year, and that's down to $400,000. And then the current director said, "I'm not sure it's even that."
Yeah, I don't know why anybody would send their kids there, or courts would send their kids there, and they're obviously not keeping track of it. Okay, then Oregon. There was a suit brought, and we told you about it, by a group calling themselves the Religious Exemption Accountability Project, saying that a lot of these religious schools get all kinds of federal money, and they're discriminating against their LGBTQ students. But a federal judge dismissed their suit. They sued the religious schools, saying that they were discriminating against students despite receiving federal funds, and they cited the Bostock decision, which says such discrimination in employment is illegal. But a Clinton judge, Ann Aiken, said they lack standing to assert their claim under the Administrative Procedures Act, whatever that is, and said that the Supreme Court has upheld these religious exemptions.
This is another complicated, decision made on some obscure legal basis. And it's really hard to parse how all of this is going to shake out at the Supreme Court level, because it has the potential to impact a lot of things and have a lot of, to open the door to a lot of discrimination on a lot of levels, not just against us.
Well, even the Obama administration granted a lot of these waivers to these religious schools, to go ahead and engage in this kind of activity. In the old days, when we were kids, Bob Jones University was told, if you're not going to let the people of different races date each other, you can't get federal funds. It's just like that. You could do it, you're a private religious group, you can do it, but you can't then say, well, we want federal funds to support our bigotry.
And the way the Supreme Court is going now, it's hard to imagine how a ruling like that could be consistently upheld when they're giving all these exemptions.
Right. Well, I mean, Brown v. Board of Education could be at peril. All right. Let's go to some other state news. Now, you did talk about Wisconsin, didn't you? That the state licensing board there is once again banning conversion therapy?
Did not.
No, okay. The vote was along party lines in the state legislature. 20 states in the District of Columbia ban the practice. Governor Tony Evers, does it by executive order, and then the state through the state licensing board, and then the Republican legislature, which has a veto-proof majority, overrules him. All right, should we get to the news of drag queens?
Yes, let's do that. We have, for example, right here in New York, and I say here in New York, I'm actually in California right now, but in New York and in my grandmother's old neighborhood, which infuriates that this is happening there. East Elmhurst. Yeah, right. So right next door to Jackson Heights. It's all part of the same neighborhood. But they've been attacking the drag queens, the drag story hours in libraries in Jackson Heights and East Elmhurst, they being the usual suspects, the Proud Boy types. But happily, the city council member there, and I hope I pronounce his name correctly, Shekhar Krishnan, has been standing up for the community. And as a result, on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, he got those Proud Boy types outside his house protesting. Second time they've done that outside his home. They've done it 4 other times at the libraries and district offices where Drag Story Hour has occurred. So that was really difficult, but he's not budging. He is saying, let these protesters come. They're not going to budge me. And especially on a day like today, this is meaningful, and we are going to stand by LGBTQ rights.
Jackson Heights, and what's the other neighborhood you said?
Elmhurst in East Elmhurst.
This is the most diverse neighborhood in the world.
This is the neighborhood that's on the 7 train that they always talk about. You ride the 7 train from one end to the other, and you're basically taking an international tour of the globe.
You can just walk a few blocks there, and you're in completely different countries. It's an absolutely wonderful neighborhood. Was represented by an out gay man, Danny Drum, who was term limited, an old friend of ours, and succeeded by this guy, Shekhar Krishnan. So yes, if you're going to represent that area, you're going to be standing up for LGBTQ rights and the rights of all. In fact, the Central Plaza in Jackson Heights is called Diversity Plaza. So they're into it out there, and so much the better.
Well, meanwhile, in Baltimore, Maryland, protesters have taken kind of the approach we used to see when the Westboro Baptist Church would go to the funerals of people who had died of AIDS,
or Matthew Shepard, yeah.
Yes, and scream horrible things, and people would show up with giant angel wings to block them. Well, similarly in Baltimore, when the haters are showing up at Drag Story Hour, they are creating a rainbow wall to block the attendees and protect them from the abuse, and so they can have their kids enjoy a happy story time, which is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I wish we had pictures of it. This is the Canton Live branch of the library in Baltimore, and 80 people attended the Drag Queen Story Hour at a church across the street from the library, and they needed a bigger space. 24 protesters showed up, 70 counter protesters from our side who held up umbrellas, flags, sheets to block the anti-LGBTQ signs while playing Disney music and Broadway tunes and chanting, "Leave our children alone and let our kids be kids."
Megan McCorkle, who's a spokesperson for the library system, said, "We've been organizing Drag Queen Story Hour for the past 3 years and never had protests. I have no idea what caused this."
Well,
I can tell you, social media is what caused it.
It's because of that damn internet. This has become a thing for what's called the libs of TikTok. They alert people all over the country and they say go. And there's a handful of people who will go anywhere when this happens, just like the Westboro Baptist Church. I mean, the Westboro Baptist Church only had about 50 members, and they did thousands of demonstrations a year. And these groups, there have been 124 incidents last year targeting these readings in 47 states. I don't know what the ones that didn't get hit were, but it's just become a thing. And some of these people stand there in total indignation, like you're harming our children. I mean, they don't have any idea what's going on.
Well, but to link this back to George Santos, which may seem odd, but it's part of that whole, new right-wing approach of say anything to win. Say, oh, drag queens are groomers. Say it enough time, and enough rubes will believe you that, they'll get out there and they'll protest, and you'll score political points, and you'll go further in the political system. It's just that say anything mentality.
Well, Arkansas is introducing a bill to classify drag shows as adult entertainment. Now, sometimes it is, but when you just get dressed up to read it, I mean, what about when a clown gets dressed up? What's that? I mean, that's a kind of drag. I mean, quite frankly, what I'm wearing is drag. It's male drag, whatever. Seriously, and I mean that, we shouldn't be judging each other on what we're wearing, but that's what they're doing.
Well, I can't imagine for a second that a law like that would survive constitutional scrutiny.
Now, we told you last week about Florida, how Governor DeSantis, who, by the way, is losing in the polls to Trump by about 47 to 30 or something.
I thought he was winning.
Not now. There's a new poll that just came out today that has Trump in the lead for the Republican nomination. Now, I think if Trump were the nominee, he'd be easier to beat, I think. On the other hand, if he gets elected again, I think the United States is kind of over. And that's no joke. But that's what's happening. So anyway, he's been stacking university boards with these complete right-wing nuts. And again, this is going to alienate the students, and they're not going to want to go to these schools if they implement these policies. They'll just leave. But at my old alma mater, the University of Virginia, the student council there called on the General Assembly in Virginia to block my Governor Youngkin's nomination of my classmate from the class of 75, Bert Ellis, a right-wing nut, calling him a threat to marginalized students. Now, of course, in my day, he was just anti-gay and blocked co-sponsorship of a speech by Frank Camedy, the founder of the gay movement, back in 1975. So
to be clear, Andy, you get Bert Ellis and I get Mark Takano.
You get who?
I get Mark Takano as
we had some fine alumni of the university, very fine alumni of the University of Virginia. Very fine. I'm grateful to Virginia. In my day, it was quite cheap. I was an out-of-state student, and my tuition was like $700 a semester. Now it's ridiculously high. It's probably up in the range of 40 or 50,000 and all those kinds of. But in those days, they wanted out-of-state students to give them a good mix of people. In-state students paid $60 a semester for tuition. But our generation, or at least mine, kind of let cheap tuition go by the wayside, and that's not good for the country.
No, it's the students who come out now are saddled with so much debt, it's inconceivable.
Shouldn't be. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, should we talk about two deaths in two very different categories? One is the Catholic Cardinal Pell, and the other would be the financier.
We'll talk about him in international. I guess one other national item we should mention is I just learned that in West Hollywood, Seppi Shire was elected the mayor by her colleagues, the first time a woman of color, the first Iranian American, and the first LGBT Iranian elected anywhere in the world. She's the mayor. They rotate the mayor every year. The colleagues elect you. Her priorities are improving the lives of people with disabilities and collaborating on mental health issues and public safety with LA County. But it's a breakthrough. So now,
awesome.
Yes,
more diversity.
Let's talk about, I have to say, I was not aware of this gentleman, Scott Minerd.
Sure. Scott Minerd died at the age of 63 of a heart attack while working out. He was and I have to admit, I wasn't aware of him either, but his work sounds awesome. He built up an organization called Guggenheim Partners into an investing powerhouse on Wall Street. He was a frequent guest on Bloomberg, news. But what really makes him stand out for us is the fact that with that sizable fortune he amassed, he was very active, apparently, as a philanthropist supporting LGBTQ issues, the community, other human rights efforts as well.
Yeah, one of his
he worked with.
Go ahead. No,
I was just going to say he worked with the support group SMUG International to create housing for LGBTQ people in Uganda. It is so desperately needed. I mean, the folks in SMUG, and I hate that acronym, but the folks in SMUG have been under so much pressure for so long, and to get that kind of financial helping hand, I'm sure was huge for them.
Right. And he joined a delegation meeting with asylum seekers and refugees turned away at our border through his work as a board member of the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Group. And this is the father who was slain in June of 1968 when he was running for president. When he was 37, by the way, he gave up finance for bodybuilding full time. But he returned to finance in short order, remaining a dedicated bodybuilder. But Scott Minerd, a very interesting character,
he is
63.
He is survived by his partner, Eloy Mendez, whom he married in 2017. So
together they produced a short documentary called We Are Here about undocumented immigrants under the age of 30. So they were into good stuff.
Not into good stuff, unfortunately, was Cardinal George Pell. And can we move on to that? Are we ready for international news?
Well, yes. If you want to segue to another obituary, let's go to George Pell.
All right. So Cardinal Pell was from Australia, died at the age of 81 of heart complications from hip replacement surgery. He was a hard right-winger, but his downfall ultimately was the child sex abuse scandals. He got hit by accusations by two young men who said that as youths they were abused by him. He went to prison for it, was sentenced to 6 years, but that conviction was vacated by the Australian courts, and he
did spend a year in solitary before they overturned his conviction.
Yes, so he did eventually get out. He was a hardliner at the Vatican. One of the things he was head of or put in charge of their finances, namely because he was creative in methods to protect the church from being bankrupted by cases involving claims of abuse.
Right.
So he had a long history of really unfortunate, shall we say, comments about gay people and homosexuality. I can run through them here, but God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and important consequences follow from this, Cardinal Pell said in 2002.
And what we just learned today was that he was the author of an anonymous memo that was circulating in Rome, because he was back there, which said, here's how you get rid of get a pope after Francis that's going to return the church to the straight and narrow, and against everything that Francis stood for. And yet, I saw a picture of it. Francis presided over Pell's funeral at the Vatican. So he was covering up sex abuse and all those kinds of things. But let's give them some better news. And a lot of this is late breaking. First of all, the Dutch Senate approved a constitutional amendment banning discrimination based on sexual orientation and disability. This is an historic breakthrough. We're not on the Constitution in very many places. We're in South Africa, and there's hardly any others. In 2001, this was the first country to legalize same-sex marriage, but the vote on this amendment was 56 to 15.
And speaking of South Africa, the government there is set to decriminalize sex work to combat HIV and crime against women. So progress there. The other country that has a constitutional protection of sexual orientation, non-discrimination in its constitution. Right. Apparently, there has been a growing wave of violence against women in South Africa. Up to 10,000 rapes were reported, which is up 11%. And they have the largest HIV caseload in the world. So by decriminalizing sex work, they're hoping to fight both of those scourges in their society.
Right. I mean, you mentioned, this is a third real issue for a lot of people, decriminalizing sex work. We don't do it in this country, except in Nevada, and only in certain parts. At the hearing on the chief judge of New York, one of the Republican judges said, well, you were endorsed by the Working Families Party and they want to decriminalize sex work. Where do you stand on that? He didn't want to talk about it, but God, we certainly have to confront it. But we also had a terrific sweeping decision from the European Court of Human Rights. We've got a couple of decisions there to talk about. This is a Russian case. They ruled that member states, including Russia, are obligated to recognize same-sex partnerships. The Russians have, of course, refusing to. This ruling doesn't require them to do same-sex marriage, but you have to develop a legal framework for recognition of same-sex couples. So there are 6 member states that have no recognition: Bulgaria, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, and Slovakia. And then there's the Polish case.
Yes, in Poland, the EU court issued a ruling that upheld a man's right for employment. In other words, a non-discrimination ruling.
There he is, Jakub Kwasinski, with his husband there.
I'm so glad you said that instead of me, because I looked at the spelling.
I wrote it out. Jakub Kwasinski.
Yeah, with his husband, David Majcek. And basically, he was working for a television broadcaster, state broadcaster in Poland. And he had worked there as a freelance audiovisual editor since 2010. And then in 2017, suddenly, no more work, no more job. Happened to coincide, just by accident, 2 days after he and his husband, who run a popular YouTube channel, had published a music video titled "Love Us at Christmas," in which they highlighted homophobic rhetoric and called for tolerance of LGBT people. And suddenly, 2 days later, no more work. So
well, these guys were married in Portugal. They want their marriage recognized. So this ruling affects not just LGBTQ people, but also freelancers who in bringing cases. The other big international news this week is, Scotland's parliament passed the Gender Recognition Reform Act, which makes it easier to change your gender. You can do it at a younger age, 16 instead of 18. So for the first time since power was devolved to the Scottish Parliament, the UK Parliament is stepping in, not the Parliament, but the administration is stepping in, invoking some clause and saying, you can't do this. So this is creating a constitutional crisis. This could push Scotland into independence, because even conservatives in Scotland, a lot of them voted for this law, and they're saying, you're not going to tell us what to do. And I hate to say it, but even the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, had a lot of hesitation about letting Scotland go ahead with this Reform Act.
It's quite remarkable that our issues could be the focal point that causes Great Britain to break apart, finally.
They're fighting over us. They've always fought over us.
And the rationale that the conservative UK administration offered for invalidating the Scottish Parliament's law is that they felt it created inequities, inequalities in the treatment of people across the UK, to which I say, if that's the case, then liberalize laws throughout the UK so that they're the same.
Exactly.
So that everybody has the right to change their gender.
Transgender issues became a hot button issue in the campaign for the leader of the Tory party. And they tried to outdo themselves, saying, oh, no, women are women, trans people are something else, blah, 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 blah. But, the conservative government once made a commitment, we're going to get rid of conversion therapy. Then they said, under Boris Johnson, no, we're not going to do it for trans. Today, in reference to this other bad decision, they're saying, okay, we'll ban conversion therapy for LGBTQ. You can't do it anymore. Hold on to your seats. That's not a final decision.
Wow. Going down to Kenya, we have more information on the LGBTQ activist whose body was found in a trunk. The name of the activist is Edwin Chiloba, a 25-year-old designer and model. And apparently he was smothered, and it looks like it was likely a case of domestic violence. Five people now, I believe.
He was basically asphyxiated by being put into a metal box. Originally, they said they gouged his eye out, they beat the crap out of him. But I mean, that's apparent. The police, at least, are saying that's not the case. This guy was disowned by his family. His sister called him a devil for being gay, and now another relative is saying, "Don't say he was gay. He was a good pastor. He was a good Christian." Because this is a Christian country, by the way, Kenya. But it's a very sad story all along. The ex-partner has been arrested. What's his name? Jackton Odhiambo, also in his mid-20s, and 5 other people were arrested in this case. All right, in Romania, a same-sex marriage and civil unions are not recognized, but Evie, a trans woman, has identity papers that class her as a male, so she could marry her woman partner. So she shows up, and they said, "Go get dressed up according to the identity in your papers." She refused. There was more resistance on the wedding day, but they eventually got married, but it left them wanting to leave the country. My grandparents too.
Or is your ancestry Romanian, Andy? I thought you were in Hungarian.
They're German, but it was a German town in Eastern Europe. That's not there anymore. There was something called World War II. The Germans were very mean, and the German towns sort of don't exist anymore. All right, in India, this is the ruling Hindu party is hostile to Muslims, but the leader of the parent organization has come out in support of LGBTQ rights days before the Modi government is due to respond to the Supreme Court about petitions to legalize same-sex marriage. This guy's a biggie in the party, Mohan Bhagat, and he cited Hindu scriptures and mythology as the basis of his support.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I hope it holds.
All right. What else have we got? Okay. Well, Hong Kong, the High Court heard the challenge to the laws around public restrooms and trans people. We'll give you that when they make a decision. What else? We got to get to your stuff here. Let's go.
Well, just really quickly, there's some AIDS and health news. We should mention something Anne passed on to us, which is unfortunate. An investigational vaccine that was safe and tolerated was not showing any efficacy against HIV. So they've pulled the plug on those trials, and it underscores the challenges that face the global community in the search for an HIV vaccine.
Also in health news, supply chain issues are creating shortages of testosterone around the world, especially in Mexico, but all over the world. We have shortages here in some cases. And one of these trans men said, when I can't get my dosage, it's as if knives are stabbing into my stomach, and it can lead to loss of bone calcium. So they're all networking with each other to try to get the drugs. And I have attention to heterosexuals here. You accounted for 22% of new HIV infections in data released from 2020, but fewer than 1% of you are using PrEP, and only 32% even know about it. So the CDC found that many doctors don't recommend PrEP to straight people because they see it as a gay medication.
And when you see the ads on TV, they always show gay people.
Yeah. All right. Golden Globes.
Golden Globes. I did not watch.
I didn't either. I saw a few minutes of it. They tried to rehabilitate themselves after being exposed for lack of diversity, 0 black members, being boycotted a bunch. But anyway, the out gay host was Gerard Carmichael. And what I got to see was that he did a terrible job, although his first line was pretty funny. "I'm here because I'm black."
Which was true.
But he kind of made a homophobic joke during it. I don't want to get into it. But I'm glad that he got at least he got $500,000 for the gig, which is a lot less, though, than they paid Ricky Gervais. And then the big honoree with the Carol Burnett Award was out gay producer Ryan Murphy. Glee, Feud, Pose. He was introduced by Billy Porter, who said Pose was turned down 162 times until Ryan said yes. Murphy paid tribute to LGBTQ actors there: Billy Porter, Nicey Nash, Matt Bomer, Michaela J. Rodriguez, and Jeremy Pope. And he said his goal was to take the invisible, the unloved, and make them all heroes. I long to see, but never did in pop culture. Although, of course, this is also the guy who produced Dahmer and the Andrew Cunanan story. So, I don't know what's supposed to say. Anyway, not too much in terms of gay winnings. Kate Blanchett plays a predatory lesbian in Tar, and she keeps winning. And she also won the Critics' Choice Award, as did Brendan Fraser for playing a morbidly obese gay man in The Whale. Now, Chris Cooper, you've got a book coming out, Extraordinary Birder. Tell us.
No, the book is Better Living Through Birding. That's
sorry,
the book.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My notes. There's the book, Better Living Through Birding, Notes from a Black Man in the Natural World.
It's a memoir. And
So
it's
it's
writing memoir I found incredibly difficult. It's like taking off your clothes in public. And in fact, there is an episode where I take off my clothes in public in the book. You'll have to read the book to find out the circumstances, how and when that happened. But yeah, no, I basically just sort of tried to communicate how birding has been sort of laced through my life, but also it goes a lot into, growing up gay, out gay. And as a kid, closeted gay all through high school, and how, that kind of shaped my life and my perspectives.
right. So, and this is due out when?
It comes out on June 13th.
And we will give you the link if you want to learn more about it in our email. Go to gayusatv.org for that. All right. So what I was referring to at first was the television series by National Geographic, Extraordinary Birder. Tell us about that.
So I have the extraordinary privilege of being able to go around the country looking at birds as a job now, which is fabulous. It's a 6 episode season. And we go to New York, we go to Washington, D.C., we go to here in California, we go to Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and most significantly for me, Alabama, because I'm like, the Deep South, I don't want to go there, but we went. And it was fascinating and interesting, and a collision of civil rights history and birding, if you can imagine that. So it's a real interesting show. We just basically put it out there that birding is for everybody, and it will change your life.
And at first it's going to be on National Geographic, and then it's going to be added to Disney Plus. And I should say about your book, Salon.com did a feature that put it on a list of 22 books they're looking forward to this year.
Which was really kind. Thank you, Salon.
Okay, so now you're going to give us, you were at was it the Palm Springs?
Yes, I was at the Palm Springs International Film Festival. And let me just put in front of me my crib sheet on my reviews. Hang on one second. And the first movie I saw, or I want to talk about, is The Blue Caftan from Morocco. It was exquisite. It was the best thing I saw in the festival. It immersed you very sort of completely in a different culture. It tells its story almost entirely through detailed, slow, exquisite immersion in what's happening rather than in any other way of telling you what's happening. And it is gay. It is gay in a way that you don't expect, and it's lovely. So I highly recommend The Blue Caftan if you get to see that.
Blue Caftan. And then
Blue Caftan. That's
then we got
Morocco.
Argentina.
Yes, Sublime from Argentina is a touching gay coming-of-age tale. That horrible situation so many of us live through when we're young, where we fall in love with our straight friend. And oh God, they captured a lot of that agony. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And they spend a little too much time with the kid playing in his band, but otherwise it's really touching.
I was lucky to have two close friends who turned out to be gay. I don't know how much I pined, but there they were. We had provided some support once we finally came out to each other, but that was in high school. Well, just like right around Stonewall.
That's fantastic. I went through the falling in love with a straight friend in college, and the experience was so painful. I just kind of developed this circuit in the back of my brain that, if I'm falling for somebody and then I find out they're straight, the circuit trips, and I'm not interested anymore, because I'm like, I'm not going through that again.
Right.
Anyway,
now we got a film from Germany.
Yes, it's called Eismeyer, and it's about a closeted gay drill sergeant in the German military who suddenly is confronted with an openly gay, very attractive member of his squad who he has to train. It's soapy and it's steamy a little bit, but it is actually based on a true story, which really surprised me. So if you're looking for that kind of thing, it's a lot of fun. It'll get the juices flowing watching this movie.
Okay.
And then finally,
there's one from the United States of America.
Yes, called with the very lengthy title of Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, which is apparently based on a very popular novel. It's a gay teen romance, and despite some flaws, and for me, the biggest flaw was that too much of it relies on narration. I am not a big fan of narration in movies, but despite that drawback, it actually is relatively successful, and it stars, for example, what's her name from Desperate Housewives? Latina woman. I'm blanking on her name. Anyway,
I was there when the film The Times of Harvey Milk, the documentary, won for Best Documentary at the New York Film Critics. I was with Harvey Fierstein. He got up to accept the award because he had narrated it, and he gets up and he says, "This voice was made for narration."
Oh, maybe I can get Harvey Fierstein to do the audiobook of my book.
He did the audio of his book. And of course, his memoir is out. But now you're finally going to tell us in our last 2 minutes about a TV series that I have not seen called Severance.
Yes. Now I am late to the party. Has been out for a while and winning accolades. It's streaming on Apple Plus. I am not going to say much about why you should watch it as a gay person because I don't want to spoil the wonderfulness of it. I want you to just go check it out. It is worth watching regardless of any sort of gay aspect that may be there. But wow, I was watching it and I thought to myself, this is not the kind of gay matter that you will see very often in anything else.
And what's it basically about?
It's fascinating. The setup is that a workplace is developed where they can split your consciousness that you use at work from your consciousness in the rest of your life. And what are the implications of that? That's the setup. It is fascinating. They immerse you in this world. They throw you right into that situation. You have no idea what's going on, and you're slowly learning it and figuring it out. And then in all of the process of figuring this out, something gay happens, something gay that you will rarely see on TV, and it's fabulous.
Now, you young people can understand it. Do you think we elderly people can?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Chris, we're down to our last minute. I just before we break. Also, congratulations on the book, the TV series. Thanks for the movie reviews and the political analysis. But just your last minute. How are you feeling these days about the state of the country?
Well, I try to stay hopeful, and the results of the midterms were actually so much better than everyone was predicting. So there is reason for hope, but more than hope, there's reason to work, to get the work done on the ground, canvassing and writing letters and just making sure that our side turns out when the elections come.
Yes. That's what we certainly encourage you to do. Look, we fell down on the job here in New York and we lost a bunch of seats. So, everybody's got to get to work. Nobody's exempt from this.
George Santos, we lost a seat.
I know. It's shocking. Thanks for everybody for being with us. Sign up for our email at gayusatv.org. Thank you, Chris.
My pleasure, Andy. And we'll be back next week.
With Andy, I think. Andy Humm. Thanks.
Bye.